We once again have Dawson here to talk about presentation skills. Mr. Dawson is a award-winning public speaker on the national level, and he also has his own consulting firm where he works with businesses across the country who are going through the customer discovery process and trying to raise money to grow their business. So Joelle is going to talk to us about how to effectively tell your story. Last week we talked about building your pitch. This week he's going to talk about how to effectively deliver that pitch and impress the judges. So, all right, Joelle, if you want to go ahead and get started, I will mute myself and we'll proceed.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Well, this has been fun for me. I hope it's been fun for everybody that's been on the call, whether you were on the call and had the opportunity to go back and listen to them. I don't know if Genevieve has made them available or not, but what you're going to find is I basically went over the last couple of sessions, my secret sauce, my everything that I used to teach entrepreneurs that want to use pitch events to actually get cash for their business. And one of the things we talked about was, customer discovery, which is basic. It's fundamental. It's got catchy names like, how to hack a pitch competition, things like that. But it really boils down to the basics. The basics of that, every entrepreneur should know and follow when it comes to, actually finding out if this idea works. Today, what we're going to go over is the final piece of what I consider my secret sauce when it comes to actually putting this thing together, and that's the actual delivery of it. Hold on a second. Come on, work with me now, buddy. Here we go. I was having technical difficulty. Last year, I had the opportunity to compete in the World Championship of Public Speaking. It's a competition that's put on by Toastmasters International, and it covers, every country around the world. It normally starts in January, and it goes on for 8 months until it gets down to the final 100 speakers of the world who compete. And last year I finished in the top 20, and that was in the world, Genevieve. So not just nationally, that's international. And it was really, really a great experience, especially when it get down to the end, because there we were. It was two things that I was able to take away from that. The first thing that I was able to take away from it was all of my hard work had paid off when it comes to actually being a professional speaker and really, really honing my craft and getting good at it, number one. Number two, I was the only pitch trainer in that room. So that felt really good when it comes to being able to offer what I have to the public and knowing that the information that I was going to give had some kind of value to it. Now, this was actually a short interview that I did when I was in DC. But the one thing that I want to show you, and the reason that I put this up, is the comments that I made to the interviewer at the very end. And it says the biggest mistakes that startups make is not taking the advantage of the opportunity of making a great first impression on stage. That's when you're delivering your pitch. I have been hugely successful in business because I've always taken advantage of giving excellent presentations and developing a great stage presence. Learning how to command the audience is the secret. It is definitely the secret. I don't do a lot of promotions to get speaking engagements. I make sure that if I'm speaking and I don't care if it's the person introducing, somebody closing or whatever, my goal is to make sure when I take that stage, they know that I'm the best speaker in there. That's how I get my speaking engagement. It's all about taking advantage of that opportunity that you have. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go over the elements of a great presenter. Now, first of all, let me say this. I do understand that some people may not be as good as others. But I will say this, there's no such thing as somebody just naturally being a gifted speaker. That does not exist. It does not. That's like saying, because I have great dexterity in my fingers, that I would be a great brain surgeon. And that's not true. I may be able to hold a scalpel, but if I start cutting on your earlobe thinking that's the best way to get into your brain, as you can see, that's not right. There's a lot of education that goes along with it. Just because somebody is not afraid of public speaking, that doesn't mean they're any good at it. There's a lot of people that say, well, I don't need that. I don't have a fear of public speaking. It's not about having a fear of public speaking. Okay. And the one thing that I always say, the difference between a talker and a speaker is a talker is only concerned with what he wants to say. The speaker is concerned about what the audience wants to hear. So when it comes to the elements of a great presenter, the secret sauce to that is the audience engagement. It's not about you, it's about your message, your pitch, and about the audience. What we're going to do is we're going to go over 5 key elements. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain to you why they're important and how they affect the audience. The first one we're going to talk about is eye contact. Okay. Now, everything that we're going to talk about here has everything to do with how you prepare for it. This is after you already know your pitch. This is where a lot of the falter comes in, because when it comes to rehearsing and preparing, a lot of times people say, well, yeah, I know my pitch. Great. And they stop right there. But to have a great presentation, this actually where it starts, because when you get in front of people, everything changes. So let's start with the eye contact, the windows to the soul. When you use eye contact, that's how you grip your audience. You have to know your speech inside and out in order for you to be able to do that. You have to know it back and forth. You cannot be thinking about what comes next in your speech and still give great eye contact. It's almost humanly possible to look at your audience while you're also thinking of what comes next. And if you notice, a lot of times, and it normally happens during transition, when you're transitioning from your story to, let's say, the problem, anytime you're transitioning from one topic or one part of your speech to the next, you'll notice people's eyes start to float up. They'll float in the air, they'll look down. They take their eyes off of their audience. We live in an age where, the attention span is very brief. If you lose your audience because of whatever reason it is, and this is why it was so important to actually start with a story, because you want to grab their attention from the very beginning, because you may not have that chance again, because you have to compete with cell phones. Now, even though at my pitch competitions, and I know most of them that I attend, they tell you that you have to turn your phones off, put it on silent. Right, but does everybody do that? No. But if you're looking at them eye to eye, you have their attention if they're looking at you. This is also how you can judge how effective your pitch is. If you're telling a story, is the audience looking at you? Are they looking at you? And this is the way I like to think of it. You want to look at as many people eye to eye as you possibly can, not scanning the whole audience. You really want to make that personal connection. And the way that you do that is simply by eye contact. I've had a lot of people come up to me after a speech and they say, wow, Joel, man, seems like you were, really talking to me. And I tell them, because I was. So in my head, what my goal is to look at every single person as many as I can. It depends on how long the speech and how big the audience is. But I want to look at each and every one of them for 2 to 3 seconds. So for that 2 to 3 seconds, I'm only talking to you. I'm letting everyone else in the audience listen, but I'm only talking to you. And when you have that connection with them, that's when you know that the message that you're delivering is being received. So eye contact is extremely important. So when it comes to practicing, and I'm going to even show you how to practice, your goal should be to look as many people in the eye as you possibly can while you're giving that speech. Now let's talk about hand gestures. In the previous session, we talked about PowerPoint as a visual aid, right? Your hand gestures are the exact same. When I'm not doing any type of training, I don't use the crutch of PowerPoint. Why is that? Because I want the entire audience looking at me. I don't want them looking at a screen. I want everybody's attention. Now, this is why hand gestures are so important. Remember, we talked about some people are auditory, some people are more visual. When you learn how to tell a story with your hands, that takes the place of a PowerPoint. It's actually more effective because they're not trying to look at you and then look at the screen, look at you and then look at the screen. You have their attention. But hand gestures has to be in a certain range. There are some people that, give you a perfect example. I used to go to Starbucks a lot. And during the summer, there's this group of ladies that they would come every Sunday and they would sit there. If you ever watch a group of ladies talk, you can always tell, which one is doing the talking because they naturally talk with their hands. Women are more emotional than men. So it's easier for them to talk with their hands. Now, sometimes the hands are all over the place, but in that case, you have to kind of tone that down. How do you do that? If you're the type of person that uses your hands a lot, that doesn't mean it's bad, but that is something that you may have to pay attention to because when you do these type of things, it's just like taking your eyes off of the audience. It'll be too much for them, which means that they will disengage from you. Just imagine you talking to somebody and they're just like flying off the handle. They're right in front of your face and their hands are waving all over the place. That's too much. It's too much. So subconsciously what you're going to do is you're going to put some type of barrier in between, whether it be distance or whether it be just you averting them, turning to the side and things of that nature. It's too much. You want to make sure that you do have their attention, but you don't want it to be too much. If you already know that you're the type of person that uses a lot of hand gestures, maybe a little too much over the top, do this. Try to keep your hands and of course you want to keep them in front of you, but only try to use hand gestures when you're describing something. For example, if you were describing a shape or if you were describing some type of emotion, just by you paying attention to that, it's going to take them from going all over the place to bring it down to a tolerable level. If you only focus on when you can actually describe something that's physical or describe an emotion. On the flip side of that, men, a lot of times we have a tendency not to use any hand gestures at all because we're more logical. It's like Hank Hill. I don't know if you guys remember the cartoon that used to come on, Hank Hill. You had Hank Hill, Bill Dotrey, Boomhauser, and Dale Dribble. They're standing like in a semicircle, and it's like, yep, yep. And nobody's moving. Nobody's doing any hand gestures. If you're looking at them from far away, you can't really tell who's talking. If you're standing in front of an audience and you're not using a lot of hand gestures, remember, some people are paying more attention to what they see versus what they hear. So when you don't use any hand gestures and you're just standing there, to the people that are visual, it's almost like you're not even talking to them, which means what? They will disengage from you. So how do you fix that? The same way. If you don't use a lot of hand gestures, look for areas where you can describe something, a physical shape, or to describe some type of emotion. So now you go from not really using any hand gestures at all to starting to use some hand gestures. You want to practice until it's natural. It has to be natural. It can't be forced because people are going to think you're having a fit or something. Okay, so whether you use a lot of hand gestures or whether you don't use any at all or very little, focus on those two areas and it'll bring it up to an even keel. Now, if you're okay with your hand gestures, you'll find out in the video, and we're going to talk about critiquing video a little later, you're going to make that decision. You're going to say, well, I use a lot of hand gestures, or I don't use any hand gestures, or I think my hand gestures are fine. If for some reason you don't know, we'll have somebody else check that when it comes to feedback. Okay, the tiger in the zoo, I think is a beautiful animal. But do you know that the tiger is one of the least viewed? When I say least viewed, as far as a time span, people will watch an elephant sit there and eat grass longer than they will watch a tiger. Why is that? Because tigers pace. And after a while, that makes people anxious. It actually builds anxiety. So when you're on the stage, we in the speaking business, we call that the tiger in the cage syndrome, where somebody just walks back and forth across the stage. You will definitely lose your audience if you do that. If you do that for 5 minutes, it's going to be challenging for them to actually stay engaged with you. But there is something called moving with purpose. So when do you move on the stage? This is going to be something that's really, really quick. If you just take your stage area and divide it into 3 parts, there's something called moving with purpose. There's different parts of your speech. If you deliver this portion of your speech in one area, you deliver another part of your speech in another area, you deliver another part in another area. Okay? You want to use as much of the stage as you possibly can, but you do not want to pace. When you stand firm, that builds confidence, and you look more confident, you look more professional when you're just standing there talking, connecting with the audience, and then you switch to another part of your speech, you use another part of the stage, and vice versa. Here's the tip though. Regardless of where you start, you do want to finish in the middle. Okay? They call that the position of power. This is where you start. This is where you finish. Make sure that your movement is planned. The person that has the best movement just normally looks more confident versus just standing there, shifting around from one foot to the other. It's only 5 minutes. It's only a 5 to 7 minute pitch. Okay? So it's very easy to spend a minute in the session, a minute to that, because you're going to talk to the whole audience. If you remember, like when you're in elementary school, if the teacher's only standing in the front and your desk is on the back somewhere on one of the sides, it's very easy to disengage, right? It's very easy to get distracted. But if that teacher walks to that side of the room, now she's got your attention. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. Use the stage to really keep your audience's attention. And how do you do that? By purposefully moving to this part of the stage, tell a part of your pitch, move to the other side, tell a part of your pitch. Remember, you do want to start and end in the middle, front and center. Okay? Vocal variety. Vocal variety is a big one. If you listen to yourself, and you will, versus when you listen to yourself giving your pitch, if you've not practiced it enough and paid attention to it, it's going to be monotone. You don't want that. There's this guy, I don't know how in the world this guy made a living as a comedian. His name is Ben Stein. And he talks like this. He's the guy that did the dry eyes commercial. I don't remember what the eye drop thing is, but he talks like that. And this guy makes me want to just pull my ears off so I don't have to listen to it. That's normal if you're not familiar with your speech, because remember, everything's kind of shuts down. Your total focus is trying to remember what comes next. If you're only trying to remember what comes next in your speech, it's going to come out flat, and you don't want that. You're going to be telling a story. You're going to tell an entertaining story. And the best way to do that is with vocal variety, because some people are paying more attention to what you say, not what they see. So you have to have something for them as well. So when it comes to vocal variety, you have your ups and downs. What I mean ups and downs, you have high pitch and you have low pitch. You have volume. It can be really loud or really soft at certain points. You also have the pace of it. Some parts of your speech may be fast. For example, if you're telling an action part of your story, you may tell that at a rapid pace, depending on the emotion. If it's Slow, it can be a slower pace if you're talking about maybe a sad event or telling a sad part of a story. You may want to slow that down. So when it comes to vocal variety, you want to make sure that you do incorporate that. Understand what your vocal pattern is. Know what your vocal pattern is. First of all, know that first of all, it's not flat. It is not flat, except for Ben Stein. But one thing that you do want to focus on when you're telling your story and telling your pitch is you do want to use some type of enthusiasm in it, which has to come from your voice. It has to come from your voice as well as your facial expressions. Another thing that normally happens if a person doesn't know their pitch well enough is they'll be just deadpan face, no facial expressions at all. Why? Again, they're still trying to remember what comes next. So everything that I'm telling you right now, all of this practice and all these techniques, this happens after you know your speech, after you know it word for word. Okay? So if you look at yourself, give it just normally talking, or you see people just normally talking, and then you look at them and give a speech, you'll notice that there's not that much facial expression involved. Why? Because their brain is focused on trying to remember what comes next. But you do want to use facial expressions, natural facial expressions, the facial expressions that matches what you're saying. Okay? So those are the 5 key elements of a great presenter. The eye contact, hand gestures, the pacing, or I should say the use of the stage, don't pace, vocal variety, and your facial expressions. The gentleman on your screen is Dr. Ivan Joseph. This is what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to talk about how I prepare for a pitch, because what I want to do is give you guys some techniques to get better. You'll get better the more you practice. So it's not like a one size fits all to catch us. Say, okay, now I got all this, I practice, and all of a sudden I'm better. You're going to get better every single time you practice. Every single time. Okay? Dr. Ivan Joseph is the athletic director for Ryerson University. It's in Canada. Pretty interesting story though, because we're talking about confidence here. He decided first of all, when he went to Ryerson University in Canada, they didn't have any type of athletics at all. So he decides, by him being a former soccer player, that he wanted to start a soccer team. Okay, now let me back up a little bit. I said he was a soccer player. I didn't say he was a professional soccer player. So nope, he didn't win the World Cup, didn't play professional or anything like that. He was just a soccer player. That's it. Okay. So, but he decided that he wanted to start a soccer team at the university. Now, if you don't have a soccer program and you're just starting one and you have to compete for players, you're not going to get the best players. I think that's safe to assume you're not going to get the best players. So he starts recruiting, and he would ask people, what is it that you're good at? Of course, they would say, I'm really fast. I got a great field of vision. He actually did a TED talk on this, and it's phenomenal. If you get the opportunity, you ought to go listen to it. Or they would say, I got a great right foot and stuff like that. So he said, yeah, but that's not really what I'm recruiting for. And then he would ask him, what is it that you're confident in? It's like, well, confident? He said, yeah, what is it that you're confident in? And they would say something like, well, I can do this. He said, you're definitely confident in that? He said, yeah. Now, his idea of self-confidence, it's not like, if we're all on a plane and that plane's going down and the stewardess says, can somebody fly this plane? And then you say, I can fly. You sit back in a cockpit and then you say, well, what do I do now? That's not confidence. That's somebody that has a high self-esteem. That's what that is. His idea of confidence, self-confidence, is something as simple as tying your shoes. I know you guys thought it was going to be pretty sophisticated. No, simple as tying your shoes. If I turn the lights off, would you be able to tie your shoes? Yes. If the wind was blowing 100 miles an hour, could you bend over and tie your shoes? If it was raining, could you tie your shoes? Yes. That's what he meant by confidence. His definition of confidence is the belief that you believe that you can do a specific task regardless of the adversity. So back to the soccer team. So what he did was he got players on his team that were confident in doing one thing and one thing only. And that's how he recruited his team. He started with a ladies team. Once he got his team, traditional coaching that we would think of, okay, if you're good at this, you have to become better at this. You have to develop a better rounded player, right? That's not what he did. He said, okay, you're confident in this. This is what I want you to practice. As the only thing I want you to practice. That's it. I don't want you to practice anything else. Just practice this one thing that you already came here confident in. Well, this is what that did. Because they came confident in one thing. He asked them to practice and drill them on that one thing that they were already confident in. Of course, their confidence went even higher. It's like, well, God, I've done this 1,000 times. When he faces opponents, there was never a situation that they were not confident in. Because this is the only thing I'm being asked to do. I'm already confident in doing it. And chances are I am already know that I'm better than you at it, because this is the only thing I know how to do. So he starts off the season, just a girls season, right? He finished that season with that team as the #1 women's soccer coach in the country. Mind you, this is Canada. But you got to admit, that's pretty impressive, right? But it gets even better. He turns around and does the exact same thing with the men's team. He starts a team, recruits the exact same way, telling me what it is that you're confident in. And that's the only thing I want you to do. That's the only thing I want you to practice. They went to #1 in the country, and they won the national title. Self-confidence is a skill that can be learned through repetition, repetition, repetition. If you're the person right now that says, well, I'm nervous, I'm afraid of public speaking, between now and the Bayou Classic, you can be just as good as anybody else if you practice. If you practice on it. If you practice on it, by the time that comes, it's not going to matter, who's in the audience. It's not going to matter how many people's in the audience, because you've done it 1,000 times. I'm not saying you have to do it 1,000 times, but you do have to do it enough to where you have confidence. Now, I'm pretty sure most of you know who this young man is. It's Mr. Malcolm Gladwell. Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book. It's called the 10,000 Hour Rule. And what he says is it takes 10,000 hours to master a skill. Now, to break that down for you, that's 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, for 50 weeks out of the year. Instead of 52, it's 50 weeks out of the year for 10 years. Now, of course, we don't have that kind of time. And I don't expect you to think that you have to practice, for 10 years before you master the skill. But what I want to do is show you how do you practice to get better. And this is exactly what I did on my road to the World Championship of Public Speaking. Because if you don't understand how to practice, you're going to plateau. You're going to get to the point where, okay, you're going to plateau to the point of your knowledge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the tips to show you how to get better each and every time you practice for a knock them out of the park delivery. Okay, when it comes to practicing, here we go again. There's 5 things, and this comes from his book, The 10,000 Hour Rule. So the first thing is you have to actively engage in deliberate practice. Folks, giving a great presentation is a result of great practice. So I hope you wasn't misinformed or thought that, it just do this on stage, do this on stage, do this on stage, and it's great. No, you have to have perfect practice. You giving a great presentation, that's the result. That's the result of great practice. Okay, so first thing is first, you have to actively engage in deliberate practice, not mindless repetition. When you get ready to practice, you have to be totally focused on the task at hand, which means, okay, I'm going to make sure whether it's in my room, whether it's in the library, I'm totally focused on practicing right now. Nothing else. I got my phone turned off with the exception of the timer, or if you're videoing, I'm not taking any phone calls. I'm not texting anybody. I'm totally focused on the task at hand. That's what he means by being engaged in deliberate practice, because we're practicing to get better at it. Number two, analyze your results. If you engage in deliberate practice, or maybe I should have said track your progress first, okay? We talked about eye contact. We talked about hand gestures, pacing, facial expressions, and vocal variety. Those are the elements or the techniques of great speakers. That's what they focus on in order to have that great audience engagement. Video it. We're going to talk about video a lot. If you video it, or if you even have someone that's taking notes of it, track your progress. How did I do this? How did I do that? How did I do that? How did I do that? Okay, this is one practice session. The next practice session, you have to, or I should say, when you go for your feedback, as you can see, it almost follows what we talked about as far as the customer discovery stage, because it's all about feedback. Take a look at what they said. Okay, well, I can do this better, or I should do this better, I should do this better. The next time you practice, you incorporate that feedback that you got from either you critiquing your own video or someone else critiquing it, because we are going to talk about both. So it's not like you're going into every practice session doing the exact same thing. Remember the word pivot. Remember that, how we talked about pivoting on the problem. We also talked about pivoting on the solution. We're going to talk about pivoting again when it comes to really perfecting your pitch. Okay, so we actively engage in deliberate practice. Track your progress on your eye contact and everything else. Analyze your results. What is it that you need to work on? Okay, celebrate your success. Man, let me tell you something. This is really, really important. It really is. You can really get burnout when it comes to just practicing the same speech over and over again. I know I did it for 10 months and I just couldn't wait for it to be over with. But when you start hitting milestones, it's extremely important that you reward yourself. Okay, if I learn this speech, okay, and I don't have to use notes, I'm not pausing, my eyes are not floating all over the place, I'm not losing eye contact, reward yourself. Teaching others. You learn more when you teach. I've had situations to where the person that's supposed to give the pitch, for some reason they could not. Someone had to step in at the last minute. I think it's a great idea that everyone on the team be familiar with the pitch. Everyone. Even if you guys already have a point man, somebody that's going to quarterback it for you, that's great. But you should always have a backup. Everybody should be familiar with what that pitch is. If you are, in event that something happens where somebody has to step out or can't make it, you don't have that huge learning curve. And the best way to do that, if you're the point man and going to be giving the pitches, here's your opportunity to learn even more about your pitch. Because see, now you're teaching until you're getting an expected result. You get to give the feedback. Okay? Now, those are the elements. Let's talk about how to practice. One of the, she wasn't a world champion, but she has coached more world champions than anybody. It's a lady named Patricia Fripp. She's from British. And she has a speaking tour. It's called Lady and the Champs. Not Tramps, Lady and the Champs. It's her and it's 4 world champions. And the one thing that Patricia Fripp says is, for every minute of your speech, you should practice 1 hour. Now, if I hadn't said that, or if I hadn't went over some things I've already said, you think, well, how do I get to 1 hour? I mean, how can I practice a speech for 5 hours? I just showed you. If you took that speech, if it's a 5-minute pitch, okay, If it's 5 minutes and you gave that speech and you only focused on your eye contact, you did that a couple of times where you only focus on making sure that you gave eye contact, that's 10 to 15 minutes. Okay. If you did the next one, let's say now the only thing that I'm going to focus on and pay attention to is my hand gestures. I'm not going to worry about eye contact. I'm not going to worry about pacing. I'm only going to worry about my eye contact. If you do that 5 or 6 times for each and every one of those, you're going to be close to 5 hours. Use video. Always record yourself. Do not use a mirror. Do not rehearse in front of a mirror. If you rehearse in front of a mirror, subconsciously your eyes are going to be locked straight ahead. You're not going to have eye contact. Another reason you don't want to use a mirror is because not only is it's going to subconsciously keep you looking straight ahead, you're going to be looking at yourself. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's going to give you a false sense of security during transitions. You can look through a mirror or look at a mirror while you think of the next point that you're going to make. You take that mirror out of the way and you're going to be lost. So you're going to video each and every one of your sessions, because remember, one thing we talked about when you actively engage and deliver practice was what? Tracking your results. You're going to do that through video, and I'm going to show you how to do that through a video. Okay, always use a timer. If you use a video, the video's chances, I don't know if you will actually be able to see the timer, but you want to look into that video as if you're talking to your audience. Look at that video as if you're talking through, as if you are, talking to your audience. If your pitch is pretty close, they don't normally disqualify you, but they can. It depends on the rules. But you want to make sure, but you do want to respect the time. You want to make sure that your pitch is around 5 minutes or close to it. So even if you have to time it a few times beforehand to make sure that it's within the time constraints, go ahead and do so. I will have to add this as a side note. If you use humor in your pitch, if you're telling a funny story, or if you're one of these people that's just naturally funny and you use humor in it, you have to allow for humor in your timing. I've seen a lot of people get disqualified in not pitch competition, but in speech competitions, it's a little more strict and you can get disqualified if you go over. They actually got disqualified because they were almost too funny. It's not the fact that they were too funny. They did not allow time for the audience to laugh. So keep that in mind. If you're going to be using humor, make sure that you allow time for it. How much time should I use? How much time should I allot to it, you ask? Great question. That's why it's important to give your speech in front of a live audience, which is number 4. Because when you don't get that natural response from an audience if you only give it to video. You'll use your video to really tighten the nuts and bolts on it, but it's that live person that's going to give you that feedback that you really need. For example, if you think you're funny and your audience doesn't laugh, well, you know that you need to work on that. But you want to get that live feedback, give that pitch to as many live people as you possibly can. Because if you are using humor, you're going to have to allot for it. The bigger the audience, the more laughter, the more you will have to allot time for that. Okay? So just keep that in mind. Now, when we practice, remember, as I said before, for every minute of your speech, practice for 1 hour. So if you did your speech where you only focused on, let's say, eye contact, but you did that speech, say 5 times. Okay, 5 times 5, that's 25. Okay, so forth and so on. And then at the end, you say, okay, now I'm going to bring all of this together. From everything that I've gotten, I'm going to bring all of this together. Okay, so now you run through your speech. Now, this is also including PowerPoint. This is also including PowerPoint because you want to get comfortable with using that clicker. Remember, where's the sensor for the clicker? The sensor for the clicker is either going to be in front of you or it may be on the side, on a podium, depending on the type of setup. But the one thing that you have to focus on is that you do not point your clicker at the screen. That comes when you're not familiar with everything. You automatically, that doesn't work. That actually makes it even worse. And it can actually break the flow of your pitch. Always know where the sensor is. So when you are practicing, if you don't have if you should get a remote. You should get a remote. If you don't have a remote, then that part you have to figure out. You have to figure out, but you do want to practice with your PowerPoint. Each and every time that you do practice, you want to practice with your PowerPoint to make sure that your transitions coincide with the transitions of your slide deck or your pitch deck. That part has to be smooth. You have to know that these slides are changing behind you. You have to trust that. In order for a dynamic presentation, you have to trust that when you hit that button, that slide is going to change. The best way to do that is to practice. If you're most of these clickers have a range of about 50 feet, which is way more than you need if you're standing on stage. I don't think I've ever seen where we were in a situation where the clicker didn't work because the speaker was too far from the actual center. No, it's because, now if you remember, it's a laser. It's a laser, okay? So, but if you point it in the wrong direction, for example, if you point it at the screen, the slide will not advance. And think about how many times you've actually seen it where they're sitting there clicking, and then they realize, oh, the sensor's in the front, okay? Always know where your sensor is. That's why it's extremely important to practice with your PowerPoint, because you want to make sure that your slide transitions are smooth, and you definitely want to get comfortable with it, okay? You definitely want to get comfortable with that. Okay, now let's talk about evaluating. When it comes to evaluating your video, okay, every single practice, video it. I'm gonna say that again. Every single practice, video it. But this is how I want you to do it. You know the things that we're looking for, right? We're looking at the eye contact, hand gestures, facial expressions, pacing, vocal variety. So the first thing I want you to do is we're going to check the visual aspect of it first. So instead of playing your video like you normally would, I want you to mute it. Put it on mute. And the only thing that you're focused on is what you see. So now you have just put yourself in that percentage of your audience that is more visual than they are auditory. What do they see? Focus on that. Am I using eye contact? Here we go again, just like we did when we went to practicing. Watch it a few times. How is my eye contact? And you take notes on it. Did I lose eye contact? Are my eyes floating up to the ceiling? Am I looking down? Am I breaking eye contact with the audience during transition because I'm really thinking about what comes next? Okay, you take notes on that. Hand gestures, same thing. Once you finish with your eye contact, okay, I've watched it enough. I've taken notes on my eye contact. Now you go to your hand gestures. Are my hand gestures all over the place? Are they just stuck by my side? What are they? Watch it a few times. Or if it at a certain part in my pitch where I just go ballistic, or is there a certain part where I just kind of just went numb and my hand just went by my side? Okay. Take notes on it. Pacing, same thing. Watch your body movement. Entrepreneurs, watch your body movement. If you're just kind of shuffling around, don't do that, because that gives the audience the impression that you're nervous. Whether you're nervous or not, that's what registers in their brain. That's what registers in their brain. You want them to think of you as being confident. Stand firm. If you're going to use this part of the stage, go to that part of the stage. Don't shuffle. Walk with purpose. If you're going to use the other part of the stage, walk with purpose. Now, here's a side note. I don't know where the pitch competition is going to be at, but there's something I do want you to be aware of. Sometimes when, and this is something that's totally out of your control. So if you're taking notes, I want you to put an asterisk and write this down right now, because one thing that we talked about was staging. Most people start right in the front, in the middle, and I'm bringing this up because just recently at a pitching draft, the projector is really low. If the projector is really low, you need to test that. If you're standing front and center and that projector is on and it's like hitting you, and you're standing right in front of your PowerPoint, right in front of the screen, because the projector is too low versus the projector being high, okay, pick a side and give your pitch. Don't pitch it from in the middle, because first of all, the light's going to blind you. It's going to burn your eyeballs out, okay? So maybe, Genevieve, that's something we can kind of find out, if you may know already where it's going to be at. But just keep this in the back of your mind. If the projector is low, meaning body level, you want to give your pitch from either side. What side, it doesn't matter. Preferably the side where the sensor is for your PowerPoint. Because you will not have that luxury of being able to use the whole stage, because you walking in front of that PowerPoint, number one, is going to blind you, but that's going to disrupt your audience. Okay, so what you would have to do in a situation like that, if that projector is low, is just pick a side where, you know, wherever the sensor is, and just give your pitch from there. But if it's up high, okay, you're okay then. Up high meaning that whenever they turn it on, the PowerPoint is above your head and not like smack dab in the middle of your body. Okay, now when it comes to audio, we're going to do the exact opposite. Okay, so what I want you to do, if you can, and most of you can, even if you use your phone to video it, you can transfer that raw footage from your phone to your laptop. Transfer it to your laptop, and what I want you to do is open it, and when it starts playing, I want you to minimize it, where you can only hear it. You can't see everything, because remember, we've taken the time and we've taken notes on our facial expressions, our pacing, the hand gestures, and the eye contact. What are we doing now? Now we're switching back to that percentage of the audience that's more auditory. What are they hearing? What does my voice sound like? And that's the only thing you're doing. You're not looking at the video at all. You minimize it to where you only hear it, and you listen for the highs and lows. The most important thing that you have to check for before you even get to the highs and lows and all the fancy stuff, you have to determine, can they understand what I'm saying? Some people have a tendency to talk fast. Some people have a tendency to talk slow. Some people may have an accent. You have to, first of all, you have to make sure that it's audible, where someone can hear it clearly. This is where you're definitely going to need someone else that does not know the pitch. You know it. You know what comes next. You know the words that come next. It's extremely important. Even if you just get somebody not to even watch it, just listen to it and say, hey, you know, did you understand everything? Could you hear everything that I said? Could you understand everything that I said? Okay. That's extremely, extremely important. There's been times where I've seen that on stage. I've actually seen it in video for the last Bayou Classic Biz Challenge. I saw videos that I could not understand. And it wasn't because of bad audio. It was because of either they spoke too fast, which happens a lot when you're nervous, or for some other reason. It is important that as something as simple as that, you have to make sure that somebody that's never heard your pitch before, they can listen to it and understand exactly what you're saying. Okay? The next one we're going to talk about, is it monotonous? Is it just like one long drawn line like that? You don't want that. We talked about vocal variety. We talked about the high pitch. We talked about low pitch. We talked about volume, right? We talked about all of those things. Use that as a technique to get better. I may want to, you know, I'm telling this story. I may want to speed this part of the speech up. Action scenes are always sped up. You know, that's where you get the music from in action, in action movie. Da, 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 da. A lot is going on, but you don't have action music playing in a love scene or when somebody died. It's real slow. So be able to use these type of things to make your speech more impactful. Okay. Now, when you ask somebody to give feedback, which you should, you cannot take this personal. You cannot, because what you remember, this is, remember we talked about during the customer discovery process, we talked about listening for feedback and only going there to listen. So if you ask them, you know, did you think this was funny, or did you understand what I said? And they say, well, I don't know, man, I'm sorry, I got sidetracked. You can't say, what's the matter with you, stupid? I told you to pay attention. You have to understand that you didn't keep their attention. So there's certain parts, maybe it's the opening, that you have to work on. Okay? Because now we're in pivot mode. When you start getting feedback from people on your pitch, we're in pivot mode. Just like we did when it came to understanding the problem during the customer discovery, just like we did when we presented them with a minimum viable product for the solution, we're doing the exact same thing. Okay? We want to know from somebody that has not heard this pitch before, what was their initial reaction? Okay? I would hope, and I know you guys will, you have to work together on this as a team. Okay, and understand that, you know, if your team, or should say when your teammate comes to you and says, hey, I want you to evaluate my pitch or give me some feedback on it, they're doing that out of a position of trust. They trust you to give feedback. A lot of people, sometimes they don't take feedback well, but the thing is, in order for you to get better, you cannot take it personal. You did not write a perfect speech. I did not write a perfect speech. In order for me to place as high as I did, I took a lot of feedback on things that I just totally would have never saw. I would have never saw. But had I not got that bird's eye view or that outside opinion from someone else, there were things that I would have never been able to change. So we're doing the same thing. So when that person comes to you for, you know, hey, for an evaluation to get some feedback, you know, take this serious. You know, really take some time, really listen, really understand what they're trying to accomplish, and give them some unbiased feedback. Don't sugarcoat it. That's probably the worst thing you can do, is sugarcoat it. Okay? And say, well, hey man, yeah, I thought it was great. You know, you didn't do anything. No, if there's something in the back of your mind, or there's something that you want to say or bring to their attention, please do. Because if you thought of it, there's a good chance that someone else thought of it, or someone else thinks that you need to improve it. If you never tell them that they will never know. It's extremely important that you be honest with them. Okay, and give them that unbiased feedback. Here we go again. Wash, rinse, repeat. If there's certain things that are consistent. Now, I will say this before I close: beware of what I call salt and pepper evaluations. When I was preparing for the World Championship the week before, I couldn't tell you how many times I gave that pitch, but in one particular day, I gave that speech like 4 times. May not seem like a lot, but the first time I gave that speech at 7:30 that morning was in Houston, Texas. I got in my car and I drove to Garyville, Louisiana, which is in the middle of nowhere, by 11:30. That night, I drove to New Orleans and gave that same speech again. 6 o'clock the next morning, on my way back to Lafayette, I stopped and gave that speech in Baton Rouge. Each and every time I gave that speech, I had everybody in the audience critique me using the scorecard. There's a tip. I had them use that scorecard, but the most important thing is you have to have a way to decipher I don't want to say what's good advice or what's bad advice, but what are the consistencies? If people tell you consistently based on the feedback, which means, of course, you have to give your speech to more than one person, okay, give it to an audience. Find a social group at your school. Find another, share groups. I would even go as far as even share teams. There's a lot of people on this call. There's a lot of people going to be in a competition. This is a perfect time where you guys can actually work together and help each other out. You know, hey, let me listen to your speech. You give me some feedback and vice versa. But you have to understand how to take this feedback. Okay, you cannot make a change every time somebody tells you to, because you're going to find yourself. It's like I said, salt and pepper. Some people have a personal preference on this. Some people have a personal preference on that. So I had to create a funnel, so to speak, to where I can take all of this. After the competition, I counted, I had got that speech evaluated close to 500 times, because that's how many feedback forms that I had. So what I use to filter all of that information, I use the actual scorecard. I said, I want you to score me just like the judges would. So if you take your card right now, plus the things that we went over, and say, okay, this is what I want you to score me on. Okay. Now, even though you think that you may be giving the award-winning pitch, if people in your audience or the people that give you feedback, they all keep telling you, you know, you're not using eye contact. Okay, well, where am I losing eye contact? What am I doing? Well, you start looking down when you talk about this, or when you keep looking down. If everybody is saying that, that's what you focus on. That's what you have to change. That's how you make your speech better and better and better. And you do each and every one of them just like that. Use those 5 elements that we talked about. Make your little scorecard or something. Say, hey, how do I do it with my eye contact? Hand gesture. Did it look like I was, like I'm drowning in water or something, or did it look like a mummy? Whatever it is, ask them. And that's how you're going to build yourself an impactful pitch. Okay. Here's some feedback questions for you. Did the opening grab your attention? The best way to start a speech or a pitch to get their attention is with a question, a story, or a quote. Questions are easy. Quotes easy. We talked about how to craft a story, because remember, we want to get their attention from the very beginning. You only have 5 minutes, so you have to get them started. With the slides cluttered, remember we talked about that. Okay, 5 by 5, 5 words per line, no more than 5 words. I know, don't call the PowerPoint cops on me. This is for time and I'm running out. Okay, were the slides cluttered? Speaker transitions, were they smooth with the slides? Remember, do not put any animations or any transitions inside of your pitch deck on your PowerPoint, because to go from one version to a next, they may not work, and I've seen it cause problems. Or if you're going to be using a projector or a system versus a laptop, that would definitely cause problems. Are the slides easy to read? This should be a quick one, and what I would do, I would get with a team member, a professor or something, as I said, no less than 28, but just give it a quick check. Put it in a PowerPoint somewhere, okay? Back away from it, go to the back of the room, and just see what it looks like, if it's okay with you, okay? Just to see if that's the way you want it to look, especially when it comes to pictures. Especially when it comes to pictures, because they're going to expand. Okay, oh shucks. Were the slides easy to read? Did the speaker use a lot of eye contact? Was the speaker's voice easy to understand and hear? Remember, when you speak in front of a lot of people, you're going to have to slow down a little bit. A lot of time, even if there's a microphone, especially if there's a microphone, because of the acoustics. The walls aren't insulated, well, not insulated. There's no type of nothing to break the sound, so it's going to bounce. Okay, it's going to bounce and it's going to echo. So that's why it's important to make sure. So if I had to do anything, I would tell you to err a little bit on the slow side when it comes to your normal speech pattern, because just because of the adrenaline, that's going to cause it to speed up a little bit. So just think, okay, I have to speak a little slower, calm down, because of the acoustics and because of the adrenaline. Just to make sure that people in the back of the room, regardless of where they're sitting, can understand you. Did the speaker pace? Okay, a lot of times this is something that you don't notice. You'll notice it on video, but remember, we do want to give that pitch to live eyeballs, to a live audience. That's where the real improvement is going to come, because that's live. It's not a rehearsal, and you go into it, just like it's the real thing. Okay. This is a big one. Does the speaker look trustworthy? The only reason that I'm bringing this up is because I actually had a judge tell me. Now, here's the thing. It was nothing that this guy did wrong. I had a conversation with him about it after, on it, because he wound up becoming a client of mine. But this was off the set, totally out of the way, talking to the judge about the contestants, and he said it was just something about him that I don't know. I don't trust him. And I was like, wow, people judge. We do, whether it's right or wrong. We do that. We judge people. We should not do that, but that's human nature. We do that. And the one thing that I always tell any of my clients, if they're going to get somebody else, and if for some reason I saw something, if that didn't look trustworthy, a lot of times it may be how you answer a question, or it can be anything. I have to let them know that, and that's my obligation to them, especially if they're going to be pitching for, a contest that has money in it. Now, there is nothing on a judge's scorecard that asks you about trustworthiness. There is nothing. But we all know that when we first meet a person, we make a decision as to whether we're in a process, our brain, which is a total different workshop, how nonverbal communication works. It's the reason we don't remember somebody's name when we first meet them is because our brain is too busy trying to make a decision as to whether I like that person or not. And a lot of times we can not like a person for nothing that they've done. So ask them, did I answer this question? Did I look trustworthy? And they say, oh yeah, okay. If that's the case, great, fantastic, you're off and running. But if somebody does tell you that, you have to find out why. What is it that I said that for some reason made me untrustworthy? One of the biggest things that I see when it comes to that is arrogance, or somebody being cocky. You may not be, but if there's something that you're doing that makes them think that, we would have to correct that. The last thing, and the most important thing of all of this, is to have fun. This should not be work. If you are in this competition right now, you have a drive to be an entrepreneur. And let me tell you, entrepreneurship is not easy, but that doesn't mean that it has to be boring. It doesn't mean that you have to dread it. This is fun. This is how I got stuck in this, because I see so many, especially young people, that have a lot of energy. They have these great ideas, and they're working on their ideas. So whether it's this idea that works for you or some other idea, or maybe it's both of them, you never know. Entrepreneurship is something to be enjoyed because this is your idea. And it really doesn't have to be your idea. If someone brings you in, let's just say if your idea doesn't work or your hypothesis doesn't pan out, people work together all the time. All the time. One of my best friends is a guy from Mississippi Valley, okay, who had an idea, it didn't pan out. But he's working with someone right now who are really excited about owning a fintech idea. Guess what? It's not his business. He's not the CEO, but guess what? He's part owner. He's helping her with her idea. Stay involved in an entrepreneurial community. You have a lot of people. This is what they do out west in Silicon Valley. Other than working their guts out when they find out that their idea has legs and they have proven that there's a demand for it, if they don't have an idea, they just hang around. They'll get a part-time job waiting tables or doing something like that because of their entrepreneurial spirit cannot keep them. Well, it will not allow them to leave this because it's too much fun. This is your idea. You get the opportunity to, and first of all, let me say this. You don't have to have a business to where you make millions and millions and millions of dollars. Let me tell you what a win is. in the entrepreneurial community. A win is when you have a business that you started that you can basically support yourself, plain and simple. That's all it is. So if you had a job that you were making $75,000 a year, and you take your business and you're making the exact same amount of money doing exactly what it is that you love, I promise you, you're going to have more fun. You're going to be more fulfilled doing your own business as an entrepreneur than you ever will at working a job for someone. So with that being said, I want to wish all of you good luck. I will be there rooting for each and every one of you, and I want to see everybody having fun. Okay? All right, Genevieve, that's all I got.
All right, thanks, Joel. We, learned a lot from you today. I know I did. I joined the Toastmasters Club here in Baton Rouge at LSU a few months back, and it's really helped me a lot in honing my professional speaking skills. But I learned a few more things today. A couple of tips that I have for the students. The first round, you're just going to be recording yourself and sending us a video of your presentation. So that allows you the chance to get it right and re-record it if you need to. Just make sure you watch that video back and get some feedback on it. You should have a mentor, a faculty advisor that can help take a look at your video, send it to friends, etc. Get more people to look at it before you submit it. Another tip I'll give to the students is, last year we had some teams that tried to have multiple speakers in the one 5-minute presentation. I do not recommend that. I recommend that you choose one speaker, that you don't try and switch off and have different people do different parts of the presentation. I guess maybe the only exception might be is if you're going to take advantage of the 2 minutes that you're allowed to add to the 5 minutes in order to do a demo of your technology. That might be the only time I would say you could switch off, but it's a good idea just to have one person. If you have multiple people, it breaks the flow of the presentation and just confuses the audience. Joel, do you have any more tips regarding the presentations?
I do want to say one thing. Am I still on mute? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. About the, and I'm going to bring this up because someone actually asked me that at the training that I did at the in Baton Rouge at the tech park, and that does break the flow. The thing is, switching speakers does not add to your presentation. If anything, it takes away from it solely because of the fact that it breaks the flow. Now, I will say this: when it comes to the Q&A, somebody has to quarterback it. But this is what I always tell my teams: if you get a real technical question and you're not that technical guy, you let your technical guy answer that question. Because one thing that they're going to be looking for is, first of all, a good answer. You don't want to beat around the bush with it. You have to quarterback that. And this is where you use your team at. Okay, if you know you're not the expert in a certain area and a judge asks you a question that you're not the expert in, you get somebody on your team to answer that. Okay, that's the only time that, in my experience and what I teach, that's the only time where someone other than the main presenter would actually have the microphone, is if someone else is answering a question that's in their area of expertise.
That is great advice. I will second that. It's a good idea to have your whole team up there on the stage.
Yes.
So that if you do get questions that the speaker can't answer, somebody else can chime in. Yep. All right, well, I think that's all I got for right now. We will go ahead and sign off, and if anyone has questions about this process of building your pitch or recording your video and sending it in, please just let me know. You can access the recordings from the previous webinars, including the one that Joelle did last week on building your pitch. Those are on the website at www.biztechchallenge.com. And you can look under the drop-down menu, and there's one for webinars, and each one is located there. So thank you all for joining today, and we will see you next time, and I look forward to seeing your projects.
Good luck, everybody.
Thanks.